Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Joanne Stevens. This is our weekly call-in show, and today our guest is Mark Borchardt and myself, and we're going to talk about uh, income-generating ideas for parks and communities. And so, before Mark and I get into that, I'm going to make a few announcements. This call will be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow sometime, so you can always go back and listen to it. But I want to remind people that they can go to my website, joannemstevens.com, and on the website in the upper right-hand corner on Save the Date, you'll be able to access upcoming events for the mobile home park business. And those events are the not the annual meeting, but the first meeting for MHI of 2018 will be in New Orleans at the Ritz-Carlton, February 4th to the 8th. Also, the Las Vegas Congress just put up their registration. So if you go to the website and click on Save the Date, you'll be able to get information on the annual Congress in Las Vegas. It's going to be at the Terrace Hotel this year, I believe, and you can even register there. And we also have the date for the fall meeting. Won't be until November, but it'll have the dates for the Chicago meeting, which is a not to be missed event. Also, on the website, joannemstevens.com, you can click on newsletters on the left-hand side, and all of our newsletters are archived there. The December newsletter will be coming out soon, probably in the next few days. If you want us to mail or email the newsletter to you, we'll be happy to do that. Just email or call us. Our information is on the website. Our listings are on the website, and our sold listings are on the website too. I'm also always happy to do a market analysis, a market review. I'm not an appraiser, but I'll be glad to tell you the market value of your park or community, and there's no charge or obligation for that. Also, on our other website is Stevens, STEVENS, Stevens Homes and Communities.com, and we put our resident newsletters on that website. So if you're looking for ideas for newsletters, feel free to check out our newsletters that we send to our residents. So I want to introduce Mark Borchardt. He's the regional manager for Stevens Homes and Communities, and he's responsible for 400 sites and also quite a number of homes that we rent. And so he is very well versed in maximizing the income side of our operations. And Mark has a background in retail, which I think lends itself very well to the mobile home park business. He's had a lot of experience in hiring managers and meeting sales goals. So that's a good background for this industry. I would encourage any of our listeners, if they're looking for a manager, to think about somebody with a retail background. So we're going to talk, some of the topics we're going to talk about today in maximizing income for parks are water, utility, water, sewer, garbage, income and what to do about those. We're going to talk about payroll and how to get the most out of the money that you're spending on your payroll. We're going to talk about real estate tax appeals. We're going to talk a little bit about selling and renting the homes. Obviously, there's no magic bullets on those, but maybe there's some tips that we've learned mostly by trial and error, and mostly by error on things that work and things that don't work, at least for us. And also, setting rents on if you do rental homes. And also our philosophy of buying homes and how we view the actual purchase and sale of the home that we put on the lot, whether we're buying it from a resident or buying a home and bringing it into the community, a pre-owned home or a new home. So, Mark, let's start out by talking about water, sewer, and garbage income. That's something you've had a great deal of experience with. You must go to bed at night thinking about water meter readings in your head.
Yeah, and that's true. I think I have sometimes, and but that is probably the number one variable expense for anyone that operates a mobile home park is the water and sewer, and of course like the trash too. So because water and sewer, I mean, that does have the potential of being around 20% of your revenue, and but it's something you have to stay on top of because it can also be one of your biggest expenses that cost you money also. So now we have with our parks, our properties are metered, and we work with ABT water for that. So we make sure we monitor that on a minimum a weekly basis as far as monitoring the water use compared to what we're being charged. So in our Des Moines property, we have the advantage of on their website we can even monitor that daily between the metered water and what the city is charging us. We can do that on a daily basis. Some of the smaller parks are you don't have access to like once a month as far as the actual comparison, but we do monitor that on a weekly basis, looking for any spikes or any abnormalities as far as amount of water being used. For instance, we have one in our Wisconsin property that all of a sudden the amount of water being used has gone way up, and hopefully with the next day or two they're going to find that issue. But it's been kind of a long process trying to find where that leak was. We thought we found it once with a leak detection company that came out, and there was a leak at that spot, and that was repaired. But then a couple of days later, another one popped up, so it didn't solve the whole problem. So that is one of. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention the website. Mark had talked about ABT Water, and that is abtwater.com. There's other water metering companies that are good also. We have had very good success with ABT Water. And also some park owners monitor those, either if they don't have water meters, the master meter, they read it daily, just determine if there are spikes, which if there are spikes could potentially be a leak. But Mark, why don't you, I interrupted. When you're finish your thought, I want to mention a few ideas about finding water leaks.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, about the only other thing I had to mention on that was about monitoring. If you don't have the metered water and be able to pull up the reports, is monitoring the master meter, because and that's like I said, some do it daily, and by all means, I mean, if you've got a property manager, that should just be part of the daily routine. If it's a smaller park where maybe you have a part-time property manager, I mean, I would a minimum of at least once a week, so you're able to stay on top of that, because if you're only waiting to get your water bill, that means 30 days have gone past, and by the time you get it fixed, that could be another 2 weeks. So there could be a 45-day time frame in there of a water leak, which is obviously lost revenue if you don't act upon that quickly. So by all means, if you don't have a system in place to be monitoring this every week or even more often than that, I would definitely recommend putting that into place.
Yes, and of course the water leaks can be quite confounding. If you're lucky, the water leak will just bubble right up to the surface, and you know where it is, and you can call the plumber and get it fixed. But most of the time, people just scratch their heads and try different things to fix leaks. I'll just mention a few that I've heard owners say that they've had success with, and if please, jump in if I've forgotten anything, Mark. But there was a park owner who was having a pretty serious leak, couldn't find it. She called she called the city where the small city where the park was, and they didn't have any equipment. Then she called a nearby large city, and they charged this park owner $50 an hour to come down and find the leak, and they found it. Well, for $50 an hour, that's cheaper than much cheaper than most plumbers would charge to find a leak. So I would recommend that. I would recommend, having your manager, walk the park and walk between the homes and walk behind the homes and look under the skirting. I know that sounds like a lot of times, depending on the size of the park. But one time we had a leak that we couldn't find, and it was a big leak, and it was actually ABT water found the leak, and they found the leak within about 20 seconds of being on the property, and they looked under, took off a piece of the skirting, looked under the home, and there was a small leak under the home. And this was after we had hired somebody with equipment, a leak detecting company to find the leak. And for whatever reason, they weren't able to find it. I've had good luck with people with leak detectors, and I've had bad luck. So it's not a for sure thing if you hire a leak detector that they're going to come out there and find the leak.
And most of them will tell you that up front too. It's not an exact science, because they'll still charge you, but they'll tell you it's not an exact science of finding it. So
it's and sometimes those leaks can be very deep, and it can one thing that can be difficult to find the leak is if you have clay type soil, so thick soil, or sandy soil, where the leaks will just sort of get into that sand and just dissipate. I remember I had one park owner told me that he would take his his local plumber around with a stethoscope, and they would just walk around the homes, and if they heard water running, and they would just knock on the door and find out if the people were using their water. And if they didn't have the dishwasher running or the washing machine running and nobody was in the shower, but the water was running, they would send that plumber right into the home to find that leak, whether it was a faucet, a toilet, or what have you, and find the leak, fix the leak, and hand the bill to the resident. I don't know that that's entirely legal, but this owner claimed that I'm not recommending to people. It's tempting, isn't it, to as a way to find these leaks, but it is. Those are some ideas on finding the leaks. That maybe someday somebody will invent a way to find leaks sooner than our current methods. Anything else on water leaks, Mark?
No, that was the main areas I had to cover.
Yeah, and so and there are some park owners who don't want to put in the meters, And that's understandable. I think the cost is coming down a little bit, but it still, costs money to put in those meters. The general wisdom in the business is that it can take about 2 years to recover the cost of those meters, meaning that for whatever you're spending on those meters, you'll get your money back in water bill savings within 2 years because you're not paying the water bill. Of course, the wild card is if you put in the water meters and then find out, oh, you're billing out the water to the tenants based on what they're consuming, but the park also has some leaks, so you're still paying for those water leaks. But some owners don't want to put in the leaks, and they do just a surcharge, an overcharge, or whatever you want to call it. And that's fine to do it that way too. The thing is, that doesn't seem to really cause people's behavior to change because they may not realize that they are the homes that are over consuming due to water leaks in the home. So it doesn't really incentivize people to fix their leaks. Okay, garbage. I think that's something that's changing in terms of who pays for the garbage. I think there are certain markets where it's pretty standard that the tenant pays for all the utilities, including the garbage, just as if it were a commercial rental property. In other words, if you have an office building that you lease space to the tenants are going to pay their utilities, and they're also going to pay a charge for the garbage in addition to their office rent. And so, garbage is something that in many markets it hasn't seemed to have gone up very much over the years, which is a little bit surprising. That usually when something has been flat for a long time, it's probably due to go up in price. But Mark, do you want to talk about how we handle the cost of garbage?
Sure. Yeah, we do. As far as the cost of garbage, we do it as a pass through for those parks. And basically, of course, you get your monthly bill, so you can basically just divide that out by your number of homes, come up with the amount. And we had one of our accounts where we just recently did that within the last couple of years, and there really wasn't that much. I think like most people expect that they have to pay utilities. I mean, most of the people living in our parks have, they lived in apartments at one time, or they definitely understand that part of the process of if you're living in a mobile home park is paying the utilities. So that's not usually a big factor as far as having to pay for the trash pickup. One thing that and we haven't really done it that much. We've kind of kept an eye on it, but we haven't done too much shopping around because our prices have been very consistent and affordable. So, but that is one of the things that along with your snow and your lawn care and trash, those should be things that are kind of looking at bidding out each year as far as to make sure you're getting the best price, because if you're not, it's like anything else, if you're not shopping around, it could be the company you're working with is not necessarily offering the best deal out there. And even if they know you're shopping around, they're most likely going to want to keep your business, and they're going to make sure, if they haven't already, they're going to make sure that they're comparable with their local competition to keep your business. So that's one way to help control that is definitely to be bidding that out each year, and then make sure you're charging that back. That's one of the utilities, like where water, where there's leaks, that you can't always. The goal is to get 100% of that back, but it's a little bit more challenging. With trash removal, that's one you can pretty much stay on top of, because you know what your monthly bill is, and you know, how much that comes out for each home, so you're able to maintain that. One other thing for that we do is if we have an empty, because you're charged by the number of units in your park that have like the bins to pick up. So if we have a vacant property, we always make sure we contact them to pick up the trash and recycling bins, so that we're not getting charged for that. And then, of course, once we have a tenant move in, have those delivered again. But that would be something else you want to stay on top of if you have some vacant properties. If it's going to be for a while, a certain time frame, like a month or more, then you most likely want to contact your trash removal company to see if they could pick those up to save some expenses that way.
Right. And one thing about the garbage also, before we move on to the next topic, is that I would ask, you know, whoever's doing whoever the garbage company is, if they would bill each resident direct. Now, they're not going to want to do that probably, because if they're already billing you one bill, that's more work for them to send out, you know, 100 bills, although they can probably charge an admin fee to do that extra work. But they're worried about, you know, getting paid. It's just easier for them to send out one bill to you, and they know they're going to get paid for sure. But that would be one way to get out of the garbage business, is just see if your provider will bill each resident directly for the garbage. And you could probably agree to, you know, pay that bill if the resident didn't pay. I mean, if they're not paying their garbage bill, they're probably not paying their rent either. So, but that would be one way to, number one, get the residents to see that there really is a cost to the garbage, to what it is. It's been very reasonable, at least in the Midwest, for many years. And number two, just one less thing for the manager, the owner, to have to do. Also, we have one park where the city bills each resident for the garbage. It's in with their electric bill. So that's, we kind of lucked out on that one. We're just out of the garbage business in that particular property, unless we need to order an extra dumpster for one reason or another, which happens occasionally. So, so let's move on to payroll, and, you know, having the right people and doing and what the right things for them to be doing are. And what I want to talk about is, you know, it's probably, you know, 5 to 10% of your budget is going to be for payroll. And, you know, different owners have their managers do different things, but whatever the duties of the managers are, it's important to have a strong manager in place. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Definitely, yes. Yes. As far as if you've got a strong community manager in place, that they're getting the rent collected each month on time, they're staying on top of any the common areas as far as repairs or different things that need taken care of, such as your streets or tree trimming. Also, they're very consistent and staying on top of the compliance in the park as far as the residents being compliant with your rules and regulations. So if they're handing out notices of rule violation if necessary, so if you to make sure that the property is staying in good shape. We had a big push this past year as far as going through and with all our parks and make a really big push on pressure washing the homes that needed it, to because they hadn't been really addressed for quite a while, and it made a vast improvement in the park. Along with that, there was also, as far as, you know, if there was garbage on their decks or any of the things that were just rule violations. We just made sure they got the violation. They also made sure they gave them a copy of the rules so they knew exactly what it was. And in almost all the cases, the residents were very compliant. It worked. I think it worked well, passing out the rules again, because everyone gets them when they move in. But of course, it's not top of mind all the time. But the manager's job is to, when there is an infraction, just to point that out and work with that resident to make sure that's getting corrected in a timely manner, and then that has a snowball effect throughout the park. Just like it could have an effect if no one's paying attention and things start going downhill. You can have the same effect that if you are paying attention, and people know they're going to be held accountable for following the rules that they agreed to. That has a positive effect on the park also.
It does. It does, without a doubt. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And then the only other thing I was going to say on that, then then depending on how your staffing is set up. So like in my role as a regional manager, then of course my job is to make sure, working with the property managers at each of the parks, that they're staying on top and doing their job and doing what they're supposed to do, because like anything else, any other system, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if one link is not, you can have a strong community manager, and that park's probably gonna do okay. But if the regional manager or even to the park or whoever they're answering to, if they're not staying on top of holding them accountable to doing their job effectively and efficiently, then that's going to go downhill fast. And then of course, obviously, if you have a weak property manager and no one's really following up, then you're definitely going to see. I know Joanne could probably, with as many parks as she sells and works with, I know she can testify as far as some of the parks she's seen where there was a property manager there, but nobody was really holding them accountable in the conditions that the parks were in.
Yeah, and Mark, that's a good lead into a point I want to bring out, because it's something that I see a lot of, and I think it's pretty solvable. And a perfect example is this morning I was sitting there, and today's November 30th, so the end of the month, and this was about a 100-site park. And so he showed me the list of his tenants, and he had some notes on about 8 of the people who hadn't paid, and he knows that they will pay, or he believes that they'll pay. And I think sometimes when it really push comes to shove, the ones who you're like, oh, for sure they're going to pay, for one reason or another, they end up not paying. But the point is just the cost. When you're spending the entire month collecting rent and it's dribbling in, and you have to figure late fees, or you have to serve notices, or you go to court, or even if you don't do any of those things, you just sort of blow off the legal process because you're just assuming that people are going to pay. It just keeps you from it chews up a lot of time. And so if you have any vacant sites, which this park does, most parks, that chews into the time, robs you of the time that you could spend marketing those lots, finding some homes to buy, whether they're new homes or pre-owned homes. And there is a real cost to this dribbling in of the lot rent all month, and I see it pretty much constantly. And so, this is the reason we have leases, so that people know that there's how much their rent is and when that rent is due. And so it really is a good investment in an owner's of the owner's time, the manager's time, to get that rent in right away. And plus, just the mental wear and tear of solving. The killer in any business is when you're solving the same problems month in and month out. It really takes the afford out of owning a park when it's taking you the entire month to collect the rent. So just, I want people to realize that is a cost if you're just spending too much time collecting the rent. We're getting towards the end of this call, but what I want to talk about is home sales and rental homes, and why that is a good investment and a good maximization of income. And at our properties, and I think at many properties, when the park buys a home, whether it's a new home or a pre-owned home, let's start with the pre-owned homes, because they're hard to find and they cost more than what they used to cost. And then once you find that home, we have to move the home and reset the home. We usually have to put all new or some new security on the home, new steps. There's usually some repairs that we didn't necessarily anticipate. And so it usually ends up costing a little bit more than what we thought it would cost when we bought the home. So, okay, let's say the home is in the park and we paid $20,000 for the home, and by the time the dust settled and the home was ready to start showing to customers, we're into the home for $24,000. And we end up marketing the home, and we don't want us to have a lot of marketing time. This is the state where if it takes 4 months to sell a home, my experience in the park business is that if a home is sitting there for the 2 months, there's something wrong with that home, or there's something wrong with your marketing, or there's something wrong with the management team that's showing the home. But you got to get rid of that home because it's probably not going to get better. Maybe the home needs repairs. Maybe it's not clean. Maybe your marketing isn't reaching the right targets. But anyway, so let's assume, okay, you've got, $24,000 into this home, and you're going to end up selling it for, let's say, $20,000. And so that's a loss of $4,000, which that's not a very exciting investment proposition to most people, is it, Mark?
Correct, yes.
But we do that. We regularly, I mean, it's not the goal to lose money on the home, but the fact of the matter is we lose money on virtually every used home that we bought. And why do we do that?
Well, part of that is if you can if you can help control or limit what your losses are on that home you put in there, then you need to go back and factor in the lot rent that you're getting for that property for each month or for that year. So that
right.
Because that's what's going to help offset that loss up front, that $4,000 loss up front. More than likely, based on your lot rent, you're going to recoup some of that, or it's going to start generating revenue anyway, much quicker than if it's just, because obviously it's just sitting there. You've got the cost of the home plus the lot rent you're losing.
Right.
So
right.
that's what you want to factor in on that. And I know.
If you have even one vacant lot in your park, the odds of a retailer or a homeowner calling and saying, "Hey, do you have any vacant sites? I'd like to move a home in." The odds of that happening are very slim. If you're really super lucky, that might happen to you once every 2 or 3 years. But so we have to take matters into our own hands. The other thing is, if you're that park owner and you buy that home and you take the $4,000 loss that Mark and I just talked about, and let's say you're going to sell that home, if this is a park in the Midwest, that vacant site, or that site that is now filled and generating lot rent, is probably worth anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. And so by taking that $4,000 loss, you probably just made your park worth $20,000 to $30,000 more.
Yep.
So that's not bad for, all the horsing around that you have to do to find the home, negotiate the sale of the home, move the home, set the home, market the home. I mean, there's a great many steps involved in getting a tenant into that home or a purchaser. But the fact is that if you sell the home for $20,000, you're probably not going to be renting that home. You're probably going to be selling that home, and you're probably going to be selling it to somebody who's got skin in the game, and they're going to be take care of that home and be a good resident. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Yep, exactly.
So I think the days of park owners just letting the homes go out of the park if there's a resident who needs to sell their home for whatever reason and saying, boy, that's a lot of money. It's not worth that much. It's only worth, the tenant wants $30,000 and it's only worth $25,000. If that home sells to another park owner and it moves out, it's going to be a very long time before you fill that site again. And if it takes you a year or two to make up that $5,000 loss, even if it's longer than that, it's worth it.
Yeah, far better than the $30,000 loss you'd be taking each year that's empty.
Right. Plus, if you're then you have to mow the lawn, mow that lot too.
Yeah, that's lot rent only. So yeah, there's more to it than that. So.
Right. So, well, good. Well, I think we're at the end of our call. So I want to remind people that next week our guest will be Kurt Kelly of Mobile Insurance. And Kurt is going to talk to us about some trends in insurance, especially about pets and the emotional support animals and certain breeds of dogs, such as attack dogs, and also employment insurance. I think especially in light of the sexual harassment and sexual misconduct world that we find ourselves in these days, it's going to have a lot of tips, so you're not going to want to miss that call. So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and look for the newsletter on the website in the next few days, and we'll talk to everybody next week. So long.